if they were selling eggs or anything, then no one will ever know who the perpetrators were. Because if they're buying people that never existed, then how, like Westworld. I was also taken to the governor of Bill Richardson, the governor of New Mexico's mansion, and he looked myself and Tila Davies up and down, and then him and Epstein went in and had a meeting with the vice president. And I smelt the same smell that I smelt when Clinton walks through the room by the hotel, like a smell of dead bodies and covered up with cleaning chemicals. Like, imagine a big area like this, okay? I climbed out here, out of the room I was in. It's like 8 stories. Then in the middle down here, there's a big gold dome. So I'm sitting up here looking down. I'm like, anyway. So I smoked my cigarette. And then the next day, the man in charge of the cameras stopped me when I was walking around the mansion, the New York mansion. And he called me to the room and he said, did I open the windows last night? Because he noticed a difference in temperature regulation. And I don't know if I was honest and told him I smoked a cigarette. I didn't want to get in trouble. I think I might have told him no. But he just said to me, he took me in the room and he showed me like 40 screens. And he said everything here is being monitored. Because I think when I climbed out, they worry that someone's coming in or something from the top. And he just showed me and just told me, that everyth's being watched. So you see, when I opened that window and climbed up with the cigarette, it was triggered. And then he told me that they don't only have that whole system there in New York, he also has it at his house in New Jersey. Because when he's not at work, he's at home watching the cameras. And it was like 40 TVs, like all this size, of every inch of the place. But, I never saw every room in that place. And I didn't see camera monitoring at any other property, but I'm sure they did have cameras monitoring there. But the New York one was very much, they had a whole room of it. It was a whole security room. Like the room was about 20 by 20 meters big. She's stumbling outside the court. And there are people trying to pick her up off the floor. And why did no one notice? Why did no one say anything? And where were the lawyers? These brave boys' lawyers. While she's falling outside the court. Where the were they? Sorry to swear.
Hello, welcome viewers. I am hugely delighted to have Juliette back. Juliette has been a friend of the channel for many years, since we have been researching and reporting on the JE case. And many of you may remember previously seeing Juliette, but we've got a lot of new subscribers since then. So Juliette is going to tell us her story, and then we're going to talk about the effect of Virginia's death on the survivor community and Juliette's activism. And all of Juliette's links are in the description box below this video if you're watching it on YouTube. So huge thank you for coming back on, my friend.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Thank you for having me on. Thank you to everyone for listening. And thank you, Shaun, for shedding light on this subject for many years, because as we know, they're lying. And what's happened to Virginia has been tragic. And we were meant to do this podcast a few days ago, and I'm so sorry I had to cancel because, it just all hit me so hard. But I know I want to speak out when I'm feeling up to it. But it's been horrible, the whole thing. It's very, very frightening.
Of course. And Juliette has attack dogs for a reason. So if they suddenly jump up onto the screen, well, let's make allowances for that, please, folks. So, Juliette, let's just go completely back then to when you were growing up. What were your first memories?
Of memories of what happened to me
in your entire life. Your first memories.
My first memories. Well, I started remembering things from when I was very young. I remember being trapped in my cot. I hated it. It's an interesting question. Yeah, I remember.
It's odd you've mentioned that because Jen's insisted on Ziggy sleeping with us. We've got a cot, and she just got rid of the cot this week. She said, "I'm not putting him in the cot."
Not. I had the cot. I had the pram. I never used any of them because I kept Kai like this, next to me. I kept him here all the time, because that's how it should be. You know, do you think gorillas and animals leave their children lying under a bush elsewhere? No, that's dangerous. You keep your child right next to you.
It feels far more natural. We've had to extend the bed now, so there's space for Ziggy in the middle. So you said then your earliest memories were the cot and the world, the shape of the world.
Yeah. When I was about 2 years old, I realized that the world was the shape of the size of a pea, and I realized how small we were. I used to look up in the sky and think of things like that.
Yeah, it's like we're ants.
I would never go to bed before 11 o'clock. It used to drive my father crazy. I used to climb out of my cot and come and try to find my mum.
Ziggy's the same. He won't go bed till like near 11, 12 at night.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people prefer the midnight hours because it's actually more peaceful then.
Yeah. So do you recall how your mum and dad met?
Well, my mother was an estate agent, and she was selling my dad's house. My dad was actually married at the time, and I've got 2 half brothers as well. But eventually my father divorced the woman he was married to, and he kept pursuing my mum, and eventually she caved in, and you know.
And did he bring your half brothers with him at that point?
They lived with his mum. I mean the mum, with their mum.
So
I never met her. But they used to come visit us on the weekends.
And did you have more siblings? Did you have more siblings in the household?
I've got 4 brothers altogether, 2 half brothers, 2 real brothers, and also I've got 2 stepsisters as well now.
What was it like growing up with that many brothers?
It was cool, you know. I became a tomboy, as any girl in that situation would have to do. We used to play a lot outside, and yeah, my brothers are both very amazing guys. Yeah,
and what
they don't
about
like
school?
speaking out against Epstein. They don't like it at all because they prefer a private life. But they're both geniuses who've helped many, many people.
What were your earliest interests that you can remember?
My Little Ponies was my favorite. Care Bears. Care Bears. Oh my God, I loved them.
Did you draw?
Yeah, actually, the first thing I drew was a bear. That's interesting that you say that. When I was 2 years old, I actually drew a bear. My mum was shocked. I also came runner-up in the art awards in South Africa when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Because I used to paint a lot. But then, you know, after Epstein kidnapped me, I stopped painting.
Right, we'll get to that. So, as you're going through school then, what subjects are you most interested in?
Maths. Well, art first, but maths. I mean, art's my passion. Maths gets me thinking, and science. I actually won the science award when I was 14. I was also always top of the maths class until I realized it wasn't cool to be clever.
So, like, art and maths are like opposites.
Yeah. Well, at one school I went to, I had to actually choose between art and science. And it was such a sad choice, but I chose art.
Wow. So were you thinking that when you became an adult, when I grow up, what I want to do is?
I wanted to be a therapist. I wanted to do psychology, and I wanted to help children through art therapy.
Well, what age did that begin to think of that?
Since I was very young, I always wanted to help people and help children. I think probably that idea set in at around 15, where I knew I wanted to do art. I wanted to do therapy and help children.
So would you consider yourself a healer personality type?
Definitely. Well, my mum. Well, I mean, as much as I could be. I want to help people. My mum studied Reiki, so she also sent me for a Reiki course because one of my mum's best friends is a Reiki master. And I very much believe in healing of the hands and, you know, just healing through positive thought, positive intent. I very much believe in that.
Were you very good at sports?
I was the fastest runner when I was in my younger years, but then we didn't have the money for the sport equipment and everything because my dad was hard on us, but in a good way, because you can give a man a fish and feed him for a night, or you can teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. That's my father's philosophy, and I'm grateful for that. My father also had a cool upbringing. My father's father worked for NASA. His father was very cruel to him. So my father's an amazing man, but he did teach me and my brothers to, we had to look after ourselves, which is the best thing you can teach anyone, actually.
So what about team sports? Did you have any interest in that?
I did play netball a few times, but I was more interested in life and people. I enjoy sport. Like, I love going to the trampoline park with my little boy and bouncing. It feels like you're fly like 3 meters in the air. I love doing back dives into the swimming pool. Sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry, Shaun.
You're fine. How would you describe yourself?
I'll do a somersault on a trampoline. I love sport, but I don't want to win. It's not about winning. It's about flying.
The feeling, yeah. How would you describe your social circle when you were in school as a teenager?
Gosh, when I was younger, I was quite a nerd, and then, like I said, I realized it wasn't a good idea to be a nerd, and I always thought I was really ugly, because no one in my family ever told me I was pretty, because I think, my family were wise that way. You don't want to be like, oh, someone looks pretty, or, you never want someone to value everything on looks. So my brothers used to call me rat face and thunder thighs. I've been called the most awful insults, growing up as a girl with brothers. So. And then when I was about 13, I started to realize I wasn't so hideous as I thought. So, because, some of the boys, they were trying to talk to me, and I thought they just talked to me because they thought I was nice and stuff. But then I realized they actually liked me. But sorry, I forgot the question now. You're asking very interesting questions.
It was about your social circle. You said you're nerdy. You said.
Yeah, and then I started being a bit more of a rebel towards the age of 13. I started to realize the way that other people were looked down on, like people of different color. And my two best friends at school were actually girls of different color, because I went to a prestigious school. My father, paid for us to go to good schools. My mum made sure of that in the divorce contract. My father's a workaholic. He does his own thing. And I, he's terribly upset about what happened with me with Epstein now. But, at the time, how people get caught up in stuff. And anyway, these were my best friends. And I was, and then I started, when I was about 14, I was getting into nightclubs because I looked older. My friend made us fake IDs. But I was never like a bad girl. We did used to go out and drink and smoke. But we weren't like sleeping around or anything like that, But I was quite a rebellious teenager. So,
was it strict? Was the school strict that you went to?
Yes. Oh my God. And you know what? Also, they used to come into the classroom and make us all lift up our dresses to make sure we were all wearing the same color panties. And looking back on it, I think it's disgusting, actually.
Wasn't run by nuns or anything, was it?
No, but my mum went to a school run by nuns. My mum went to Salisbury Convent. I went to Herschel. It's a school. A lot of people call it Horschel, because, a lot of horrible things happen to kids at these schools. My brother went to Bishop's, which was also a school where a lot of horrible things have happened. And they try to cover it up. And the thing is, the parents think they're sending their children to the school that's like such a good school where they're going to be looked after. And the sad thing is that a lot of ghastly and dodgy people work at these schools. Lucky for me, my mum always stood up for me, and I was never a boarder, so I was never stuck with these people. My mum was amazing mum, most amazing mum in the world, actually.
Oh, and these schools were all in South Africa, did you say?
Everyone thinks their mum's the most amazing mum, but for me, my mum's been a really amazing mum.
And these schools were all in South Africa?
Yeah.
So when you finished school then, where were you at, like psychologically, and what was your ambition?
I actually did my matric at home. I got sick of school because I missed 30% of standard 9, which is grade 11. When I was 17, I missed 30% of the year because I had a boyfriend that I was in love with. So I missed a lot of the school, and then they made a rule that if I missed 20% of matric, I wouldn't be able to attend. So what I did, my mum helped me do it. I just left the school and I did it at home. And you know what I did? I lay in the sun and tanned all year and did not much work. And then 1 month before exams, I was like, shit, I need to, sorry to swear. I was like, I've got to catch up, and I had to suddenly study it all. Bam. And I passed, but it was pretty stressful.
And what did you do when you finished school then? What was your next move?
Well, I wanted to do psychology. So my father paid for me to go to university. So I started studying psychology at the University of Cape Town. But the thing is, I couldn't afford to get to university, you know, for petrol money and transport money, because my dad wanted me to work at the same time. So I started modeling. So, you know, I was modeling and studying. And then that's when I ended up meeting Epstein.
And for this university then, what was your living situation at that point?
I lived with my mum. Yeah. My mum even lived with me after that. We always lived together, my mum and I. And even now my mum lives between my brothers and I.
And what triggered the idea to start modeling?
Well, I got scouted when I was 14 by Elite Model Management. I was at Green Market Square, a market in Cape Town. And a man approached me and said he worked for Elite Models. And then they got me to go to a modeling casting. And my mum and her friend came along. And they really sussed the people out and said, there's no ways I'm going to be able to travel or anything like that. But yeah, they wanted to take me overseas. But my mum said, absolutely not. And then, yeah, my mum wouldn't let me do modeling until I was, you know, when I was older. I had more people scouting me. I won a modeling competition with Storm Modeling Company. And they gave me a free portfolio. And then, yeah, I just got into the modeling because it was sort of a, you know, as a young person, it's a good way to earn money, to buy clothes and all the things you've always dreamed of, you know.
So you're studying psychology and you're doing modeling at the same time. How long did that last for, both of those?
Well, until Epstein kidnapped me.
All right, let's go back then. So what year was it approximately when Epstein kidnapped you?
It was 2002. So I matriculated in the year 2000. And then I obviously had like a year off, and then deciding what I wanted to do. And then I, you know, went into psychology and philosophy. And I was doing modeling, and I also used to do other work like promotional events. You know, I do like waitressing jobs. You know, there's a lot of other things I've done along the years. I've worked at restaurants many times. I know all the stories of working at a restaurant.
We left off, you were about to tell us the backstory of how Epstein came to kidnap you.
Yeah, well, it was very weird. You know, I had just started modeling, and my dream was to make a lot of money from modeling, because, you know, you hear these stories. It was the time of Kate Moss and Cindy Crawford and all these beautiful supermodels. And, you know, I'd already been scouted by a few agencies. So it just seemed like a dream come true. My mum also did modeling, actually, in the 70s. So it was something I was quite familiar with. But my parents didn't want me to do modeling, of course, and I can understand why now, because it's not exactly the best profession for anyone. I mean, it's a great thing to do on the side. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. So what happened is a friend of mine and I went to a restaurant bar, because what they do is they have free drinks for models. You know, it's a sneaky way to sort of get the girls in and get some rich men coming there and stuff, I suppose. But I mean, it wasn't really like that there, but I don't think I was very young and innocent. But anyway, this girl, Naja Hill, who worked for Fox News later on, she approached me and she said, oh, a man's bothering me. Can I please stand with you and your friend? And, you know, please save me. So we were like, of course, like, you know, come speak to us. You know, we wanted to like help her out. And then she started like telling me how she, her friend here was here from America. His name was Jeffrey Epstein, and he owned his own island in the Caribbean. She said he was like the king of America, and he was here with Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey. And she said his best friend, Leslie Wexner, owned Victoria's Secret. And they, he could really help me with my modeling career. So she said, would I like to meet him? So obviously I said, oh my gosh, yes. Because, as a young person, it just seemed like a dream come true. It was like, because I'd been like, my mum always taught me about positive intent, and I was always dreaming and hoping, dreaming for the best things to happen. So I was like, oh my God, my dreams are coming true. So, sorry, this always makes me anxious talking about this. Anyway, so then we drove along to the restaurant where they were having dinner. It was about like a 5-10 minute drive from where we were. We were at a place called Usaka on Kloof Street in Cape Town. They were at Beluga, which is a restaurant on Prestwich Street in Greenpoint. So it's about literally like a 10-minute drive from where we were. So we drove along, and, I almost didn't believe that what the woman was saying was true. But, we walked in, and sure enough, there they were. Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Jeffrey Epstein, who I'd never heard of, and they were having dinner with a few government officials. When we walked in, they all, like Spacey and Epstein and Clinton and Tucker, they all stood up. The government officials didn't, but those four all stood up and shook my hand. And they were all busy eating dinner. So I was like, oh my God, like as a young person, like I was just like, whoa, I'd never seen a celebrity in my life. And on top of it, these celebrities were actually stopping eating dinner to stand up and shake my hand. And I was just like, what the hell is going on here? But I was just like starstruck, to be honest. And then when Clinton held onto my hand, he held onto my hand for like at least 1 or 2 minutes. Like he shook my hand, and then he started talking to someone else like this, and he just kept holding my hand and had a conversation with the other person, kept holding my hand for quite a long time, like at least 1 minute, and then looked back at me and said, nice to meet you. And, I've seen one more story like that with that guy, the one who recently was found dead, the one who fell off a balcony. I can't remember his name. He was like one of the Backstreet Boy people, or not the NSYNC or something. The one.
Yeah, I know who you mean. Liam Payne.
Yeah, tragic. But he said Puff Daddy did that to him, held onto his hand for a very long time. It's the only time I've ever heard of that. Because I don't understand why he did that, because I've shaken many people's hands over the years, and no one's ever actually done that, where you have the cheek to hold onto someone's hand, start having a conversation with someone else, and actually hold onto their hand. Like it's quite intimidating, especially as a young person. I just turned 20. My birthday's in July, so I turned 20 in July. I met them in September. So I was barely 19. I was young. What's the difference between 19, 20, 18, whatever? We're all still kids regardless anyway. But back then we were really naive. Anyway, so then, after that, the girl Naja Hill contacted me because we left the restaurant after about 10 minutes. And then she said that Epstein wanted to see my modeling portfolio because he thought I had like potential with, Victoria's Secret. And then they arranged the casting the next day. And she said, would I like to go to see the president's speech before? Clinton, well, he was he just stopped being president by then. So we went to watch a speech he did at the Western Cape Peninsula, the Technicon, the Western Cape Technicon. And while he was doing the speech, Kevin Spacey was filming everyone in the hall, the students included. And it was like a very basic hall. We were all sitting on like plastic chairs. It wasn't anything fancy or, wasn't at all what you'd expect. Like it was just like a little podium for Clinton. There wasn't like, it was nothing like you'd expect for a Clinton speech. But it was weird that Kevin Spacey was filming all the people all around. And then afterwards we went and stood outside and we were standing with them, and then all the students and everyone was circling around, but they were told to stay around, in a circle, because also they'd closed the whole highway off, but they still kept filming all the people, and I didn't know why, obviously at the time, still don't really know why. But, they closed off the whole highway for us when we drove there. There were police cars everywhere. They came off every ramp. Like when you're going down, like there were police in front, and then this ramp would be closed, and then they'd come off the ramp. It was like I've never seen anything like that. Like not even in a movie. It was So, I was very, it was just all very daunting and overwhelming. And also for me at the time, exciting because I really believed that, these people were going to help with my modeling career.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. It's with my sponsor, Shopify. When I started this podcast, there were a lot of things I had to figure out on my own. Algorithms, guest booking, marketing. I was a bit naive about what was involved. And as you get deeper into it, it starts to overwhelm your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started, such as my co-host Ron's Pokemon business. Get started with your own design studio of hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/Shaun, SHAUN. Go to shopify.co.uk/Shaun, shopify.co.uk/Shaun. Link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor. Back to the podcast.
Kevin Spacey was very unfriendly the whole time. It was almost like he didn't want me there. It was very, very, very weird. Maybe he was, I don't know. So, they basically staged a modeling casting and 3 women sat across a long table and they looked at my modeling book. They said that they were for Karen models. Their names were Sarah Killen, Andrea Mitrovic, and Cindy Lopez. While the modeling casting was going on, Bill Clinton walked through the room. He walked past me, and went into another room. It was like a whole big adjoining suite where him and Epstein were staying, it seemed. And he was like, "Hi, everyone." He saw the modeling casting taking place and off he walked. And I smelled it, like I've said before, a very weird smell coming out of that room. When he opened that door, a very weird smell came out. Anyway, so then they told me to go see Epstein with my modeling book. So I went through and he looked through my book and he said, right, he thinks I'll be perfect for Victoria's Secret. And then within, they left that day. I left the casting, and then Leslie Graff from Epstein's office started phoning and arranging my visa, my traveling and everything, And I said, I don't have any money. And they said, you don't need money. We're going to deduct everything, the flights and all of that from your modeling work. So, I thought, okay, I've still got my diary from that year with where I wrote down everything I packed, It was very basic. I was taking I even packed my own towel. I thought I was going to some apartment where I was so naive. I thought if you're going somewhere, you've got to take a towel, So anyway, I arrived there after a 20-hour flight from South Africa. I barely slept on the flight because I was so excited, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to make all my family's dreams come true. I'm going to help my mum and my brothers. Everything's going to get better for us all. And then, a man collected me at the airport in a black car and drove me to the modeling apartments, 301 East 66th Street, the modeling apartments that Epstein owned. And I got into the apartment and I was looking out the window and I was just like, whoa, because, coming to New York from South Africa, it was so different. South Africa is such a different place compared to New York. I was like, wow. I remember exactly looking out of that window and just anyway, then the phone rang because there was a phone in the apartment. It was Sarah Killen and she said, pack your things, we're going to the Caribbean. So I obviously assumed it was for a modeling job or something. I mean, I didn't have a bikini packed with me. It was October in New York. New York's cold in October. So I didn't, and why would one need a bikini in New York? Anyway, the car came back to collect me. They drove me to Teterboro Airport. The plane took off. He started touching me in between my legs. and I panicked. I immediately knew that if I didn't do what they wanted, they would kill me. Sarah Killen and Andrei Metrovich sat there laughing while it happened. Yeah. So I was trapped, and it was a very, very, very frightening time. And you know what? My name was not on that flight log, which is also bizarre because it makes you realize that no flight log is accurate. They left my name off that flight log. So basically, if I'd gone missing, my family would have thought I'd gone missing in New York. They would have had no idea I'd been taken to the island. And that makes you wonder how many other people's names were put on that flight log that went missing.
So where was your mind at by the time you landed?
By the time we landed there, I was a different person. I'd been, it was like something weird snapped inside of me, and I was no longer in control of my life. Because before I always felt in control of my life, but I was no longer in control of my life because I was trapped on an island with some of the world's most powerful people. And I knew that I had no option other than to do what they wanted.
Did they take your passport from you and stuff like that? Or
yeah, they had my passport. They had everything. And also, even on the island, if I wanted to try get away, how was I going to try get away from the island? What, swim through shark-infested waters? Absolutely not. I'm not strong enough a swimmer. And it was just very traumatic. There was no getting away from me. Once you're there, and that's that.
Were there any other models though you could confide in?
When we first arrived, it was just Epstein and Andrei Metrovich and Sarah Killen. But then the next day, another girl arrived. Because at first he was taking me into the bedroom. I was getting called to the bedroom, and then the next day another girl came, and then when we were watching a movie, she started giving him and then I got even more frightened. Because, I'd only ever had 2 boyfriends, and I was just like, oh my God. It was just horrible, 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 horrible. Sorry.
You're okay. Take your time. So it seems that a reoccurring technique he used was he would ask girls to give him a massage, and then that would turn into a criminal offense. Did he use that technique on you?
Yeah, he actually did, because when I was taken for the modeling casting afterwards, they said that his massage therapist had cancelled. And then they said that they would offer me $300 to give him a massage, So I obviously, and then that's what was his chance to ask me a lot of questions about myself. And I wasn't a massage therapist or anything, but, $300 at that time was more than a South African girl would be making in 6 months, So it seemed... so that was a little bit of a red flag, to be honest, when they asked me to give him a massage. But I just thought it seemed like, okay, it's, he's very rich and he can sort of do what he wants with people.
And at this point of the story, have you met Maxwell yet?
No. I only met Maxwell on the island. She was there most of the time. Yeah, she was usually there, and I was also taken to her apartment she owned in Paris. At the time, I was actually told that Maxwell was Epstein's girlfriend. And that made it even more frightening because it's like, okay, he was taking me and the other girls to the room. I was like, and it was horrible, the whole thing happening. I was like, does the girlfriend know about this? So it made me feel even like, apart from already being basically raped and made to feel like, what it made me feel also like, oh my God, what's going on? Is this his girlfriend? And it was just horrible, horrible, horrible. Anyway, I'm sorry.
So you're right, Juliette. Sorry. It's okay, Juliette. It's okay, Juliette. Take your time. Take your time. So you said, just in summary, then you were just around 20 years old. You get flown to the island. And on that first flight to the island, how long did you remain at the island?
For about 5 days.
You said you spent 5 days, at the island on that first trip, and how did that end?
So we were at the island for 5 days, and then they move suddenly. They don't tell you when you're going to move, like on the plane and stuff. Just suddenly you'll be told, pack your bags. So from there we went to Palm Beach, and then that's the other weird thing about Palm Beach. He had like this woman who was like a top model there, well, like a good model, and then even in my bedroom there was like a magazine which had pictures of the model staying in the room next door in my magazine. So it was almost like, I've never actually spoken about this before. It was almost like showing me that, oh, he does arrange modeling careers for people. And he was making her eat cherries and like run on the treadmill all day. Her name was Helena. She actually ended up going out with Vin Diesel years later, because I looked her up. But anyway, so we were taken to Palm Beach. And then, sorry, that was a bit of a distracting story, but, it's all part of the story.
I'm curious, Juliette, what was it like inside that house?
At Palm Beach? It was, the Palm Beach house was a lot more basic than the other homes. The other houses, like the New Mexico, had a lot of like very expensive artifacts. Same with New York, a lot of expensive artifacts, paintings and like weird stuff.
Eyeballs. There was a lot of eyeballs, wasn't there?
I love my doggies. They make me happy. Eyeballs. I saw the eyeballs and the soldier statue and all of that stuff. And then, but Palm Beach and the island were a lot more basic. Like at Palm Beach, he had an office, 2 office areas where he used to sit with like his feet on the table, but on the phone. I never saw him actually doing proper work, like on a computer or like writing notes. It was always like on the phone, or otherwise he was molesting girls, or he wasn't actually doing proper work. I heard him on the phone also like doing like helicopter deals where he was like 20 million rand for a helicopter pad or something. He had like 3 phones in his car, like the car that used to drive us around. There was like all these phones in the car. But sorry, I've lost my train of thought now.
So you've gone from the islands to the Florida residence.
Yeah. Okay. So
what happens? What happens at the Florida residence?
So then in Florida, before I'm sent back to New York, he tells me that he's got my family's name on a list, and he works for the CIA. And he told me that a girl who accused him of rape was sent to prison. He planted drugs in her apartment and had her sent to prison. So I was, petrified. I was already petrified because as I've told before as well, I already saw him shapeshift into another creature. We didn't go into that now, but, apart from everything else that had happened, being kidnapped and everything, I don't think anyone would really want to stand up against someone who's best friends with Bill Clinton, and he was on the phone to Gates often. We all know he was friends with Gates because one of his assistants told me Gates used to go around there for lunch every week.
Bill Gates' wife said there was a lot going on.
Terrific. But I was actually talking about Bush, not Gates. That's another weird thing. It's Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, they've all the bills. And then you've got Epstein's name on the dollar bill. Epstein looks like the man on the dollar bill. So it's like all the bills, and also Bill Richardson, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Bill Richardson.
Yeah.
It's like all the bills, dollar bills.
So anyway, how long were you at the Florida property for?
Also for about like 5 days. And then, he basically told me that if I say anything, I'm going to be put in prison and stuff. And he's got my family's name on a list. And then I was sent to New York, and he wasn't there then, but they sent me to have my hair made blonde and to have my teeth made white. And they sent me to Frederick Fekkai, and he like made my hair all like blonde and stuff. And then Frederick Fekkai made my teeth whiter. I've still got, not Frederick Fekkai, the Bright Smile place. They made my teeth white. I've still got the card from when they did it. And then I was sent back, and then they had me back there again 2 weeks later.
Back at Florida?
The next time, I need to look at exactly. Yes, well, they took me to the Caribbean because I was taken there, first of all, in October. I arrived on October 17th, and then they took me back again in December.
And during these various, as they're moving you around various places, did you encounter Jean-Luc Brunel?
I never met that man. No, I
What
didn't meet him.
about, did you ever meet any of the other survivors who've been in the news?
Well, Tila Davies was there at the same time as me, and Shantae Davies. The other survivors, no, that's actually a good point. I didn't meet, I've made friends with the other girls over time because we were represented by the same law firm, like Virginia Giuffre, who we're talking about.
Virginia,
And Sarah Ransom, Annie, and Maria Farmer. I met them all after, but while I was there, I saw about 60 girls coming and going. Also in Europe, I saw many girls coming and going. But no, I haven't really been able to be in touch with any of those girls. And like I always say, I didn't see girls being to other men. We were all being made to go to Epstein's bedroom, but I never witnessed another girl being to another man. And that's the other frightening thing, how they opened up the case as sex trafficking because of, rest in peace, Virginia. I don't even like to talk about people, but it's just so horrible what's happened. But Virginia and Sarah Ransom were both apparently made to sleep with, and that's how they managed to open up the cases. But Sarah Ransom retracted her statement. I don't know what exactly happened there. I really don't know. But they've lied about a lot, basically, because if, Virginia got the settlement from Prince Andrew, if there were more victims, they would have had similar settlements. But there's been nothing like that.
So you're going from property to property, it sounds like, and to the island. How long has this gone for? Was it approximately 2 years?
For 18 months, they kept taking me back and forth. And over the time, I was taken to all the properties, and people ask why I went back. The thing is, I was so broken by then, I'd really been so badly affected by it. And also I had been threatened. So, I just didn't want to cross him. I knew it was just better to go along, with it. And I realized he was obviously one of the most powerful men in the world. And that recently on Fox News, there's something that's been released where Virginia had a dead man's switch, where she said that Epstein is still alive. And I'm pretty sure he's very likely still alive. Because, if they can clone people, with Bill Clinton being his best friend and all, and one of his best friends, Bill Clinton banned human cloning. He banned the federal funds used for human cloning in 1997, just 1 year after Dolly the sheep was cloned. People think that cloning's not possible. Well, guess what? It is. They do it. If it was done, that's nearly 30 years ago that they cloned a sheep. God knows what they can do now. You see these videos online where people even put on a mask where it looks like someone else. It's like,
is the possibility that Epstein is still alive, does that make you a bit scared? Is that one of the reasons you've got the attack dogs?
Definitely. And it's not just about Epstein being alive, it's about the whole corporation being alive. Let's not forget, I've been speaking out against the Clintons. They've got a big body count. I've been speaking out against Kevin Spacey, body count. 3 of the accusers who, there were, I think, about 10 people with accusations against them, or 12, I can't remember the exact figures, but 3 of them were found dead within a year. So suddenly everyone retracted their statements, and I don't blame them for doing that. Also, I don't want to, I have attack dogs for a reason.
I've written a book called Clinton, Bush, and CIA Conspiracies, and there's a whole chapter on the body count. I'll have to send you a copy of that if you read books very
Please
much.
Do. Actually, do you know what? You got me onto that Clinton body count. It made me realize. I was like, oh my God. It made me realize how evil they were. And
then people, terrifying.
Yeah. And also with Michael Bay being on the island, who made not on the island, I met him in New Mexico, but he made the movie called The Island about clones. And it looks like they're all escaping from New Mexico. And he denies meeting Epstein or ever being at Epstein's properties. Well, guess what? I saw him there. I want to be lie detected on it. I'm not lying, but he's lying. So why is he lying? What's he trying to cover?
They're all trying to pretend they didn't know him. All right, Juliette. So far in your story, you've talked about going to the various properties, and then somehow you got away but you said you came back like a Stockholm syndrome thing. How did you manage to get away that first time?
Well, what he was trying to do is bring people into his spider web, it seems, because like he eventually started offering me $2,000 for any woman I would bring to him, or girl. For any girl I would bring $2,000. He wanted them young and pretty and whatever. And then he also offered me $4,000 a month to stay there, to live there and work with him. And he offered to pay for me to study anything I wanted anywhere in the world. But, I just didn't like being there. It made me very, very unhappy, and I was very terrified of them. So I guess the way I got away was I started putting on weight, because he didn't like it if girls were a bit podgy. So also I developed very bad bulimia, to be honest. Like, I used to go into the kitchen in the night and eat and just throw up because I felt so sick being at a place like that. So I guess I made myself unappealing to him. And then and didn't go ahead with the offers of money. I didn't bring people to him or do things like that. So then I guess I became useless to him.
Do you think one of the reasons he set up this pyramid scheme of getting girls to recruit other girls was so that down the road, if any of those girls turned against him and tried to say he'd done things to them, he could just turn around and say, look, she was a recruiter, she's just as bad, and kind of they could use that to destroy the reputation. The lawyers could destroy the reputation in court. Because I've seen that with Virginia. We've seen some of the media here say she was a bad person, she's a recruiter, all this stuff.
No, definitely. And, I don't blame any of those girls who were pulled into that, because, they were also younger than me, a lot of the girls. And also I lived in South Africa, so if a girl's living in Palm Beach nearby and she has a few drinks one night, she might just make a mistake and take her friend there. I don't blame them. I lived here. So, if I'd lived nearby, it's very likely that I could have taken a friend by mistake.
Yeah, and they were kids as well.
How young girls are,
These girls, some of them were, teenage kids, underage, and you can't blame them for what these monsters have indoctrinated them into.
Absolutely not. No, you can't. And remember, a lot of they were financially disadvantaged. I've read of stories where some of the girls' mothers needed serious operations. If my mother needed a serious operation, I would have very likely gone ahead with more. You know what I mean? Well, actually, my mom did need an operation, but she was okay. But but I understand with people in like serious situations where they could be led astray by a man like that.
So over the 18 months, what was your lowest moment?
All of it. And after that, I was a mess after that. I was put on 3 tranquilizers a day. I couldn't even leave my house. Luckily, my mum was there to look after me, but I could never tell my mum what had actually happened. I only told my mum and others after he died.
Before we get to that, Juliette, what was it like towards the end of that 18 months?
I became a mess. Like, I ended up with such severe panic attacks that I had to be hospitalized 10 times. That's why I was put on tranquilizers. Literally.
And that was while you were still, is that while you were still at one of his properties?
It was after it all. It was after the New Mexico thing that this all happened.
What was the New Mexico thing?
Well, I saw like the UFO there, and then I have the memory waking up in a lab with people around me. Also when I used to have these panic attacks, I used to see like almost a spider coming down at me, almost like apparatus. I used to freak out. I don't really know what these people did, and as we all know, we don't know what they're capable of. It's quite clear that they're signing up.
Because there's rumors of all kinds of experiments that happened in New Mexico on a baby farm.
Yeah, well, it is directly between Roswell and Dulce base, isn't it? And we all know that the underground bases. I did see him turn into something. I also saw a UFO there. I very much saw it. There are many people who've seen things like that.
Did Epstein utilize tunnels? Did you ever have any knowledge of that?
I didn't actually see any tunnels to my knowledge, but, I do have the memory of waking up in a lab. And from the research that I've done and what I've looked into, it just seems that there has to be something underneath that island, because the accommodation on top was way too basic for a billionaire. A billionaire would have everything very smart, and, there was obviously something underneath. Because all there was a few chalets and, a room with like a kitchen and a TV. There must have been something underneath there.
Did you ever become aware of Epstein tape recording people doing things to compromise them?
When I was in New York, what happened the one night is, I'm a smoker, so I wasn't allowed to smoke in the New York mansion. So the one night I opened the window and I climbed out, and then I saw so like imagine a big area like this. Okay, I climbed out here, out of the room I was in. It's like 8 stories. Then in the middle down here, there's a big gold dome. So I'm sitting up here looking down. I'm like, anyway. So I smoked my cigarette. And then the next day, the man in charge of the cameras stopped me when I was walking around the mansion, the New York mansion. And he called me to the room and he said, did I open the windows last night? Because he noticed a difference in temperature regulation. And I don't know if I was honest and told him I smoked a cigarette. I didn't want to get in trouble. I think I might have told him no. But he just said to me, he took me in the room and he showed me like 40 screens. And he said, everything here is being monitored. Because I think when I climbed out, they worry that someone's coming in or something from the top. And he just showed me and just told me, that everything's being watched. So you see, when I opened that window and climbed up with the cigarette, it was triggered. And then he told me that they don't only have that whole system there in New York, he also has it at his house in New Jersey. Because when he's not at work, he's at home watching the cameras. And it was like 40 TVs, like all this size, of every inch of the place. But, I never saw every room in that place. And I didn't see camera monitoring at any other property, but I'm sure they did have cameras monitoring there. But the New York one was very much, they had a whole room of it. It was a whole security room. Like the room was about 20 by 20 meters big, the security room.
So when Maxwell entered the picture, do you recall any conversations you had with her or what she said to you?
I was always very nervous of her because, she's a very, very intelligent woman and very frightening, very entitled. The only thing I remember is, I remember a lot, but she told me how she was snogging Ralph Fiennes at a movie premiere. I really didn't speak to her much. I used to avoid her. But I remember Epstein hated the fact that I smoked cigarettes, and she actually stood up for me and she said, when her father died, she used to smoke 3 boxes a day or something. But I mean, I don't know if that's true, that her father even died. But
there's an interesting book on that I've read called The Assassination of Robert Maxwell. So, all right, so you're describing now where you're getting to the end of the 18 months and you're a mess. What got you out of there?
I suppose me putting on weight and stuff. I put on weight and started becoming a bit more sort of less obedient to him. And I wasn't bringing him girls and stuff as he wanted. But actually, do you know what else I think happened? Because when I was there, he brought out the article that Maria and Annie Farmer had written, about him. He was being very stressed about that at the time when I was there. He said that there were these girls who were infatuated with him, that were trying to destroy him. And then I think also it became hard for him flying people around after that, because he got caught pretty soon after that. So I don't know if it's maybe to do with that also. But I don't know. Also, he had that girl Nadia Monchenko there at the time. The girl from overseas, who apparently he bought from her parents, which is also very suspicious, you know. I started to wonder, okay, if they're cloning people, maybe she's a clone. Because, you know, she's also a pilot. She's beautiful and she's a pilot and she does all these things. It's like, okay. Much like, you know, that woman Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos, the company that David Boyes funded. It's like a perfect business. Like, you know, create a big company, steal a lot of money, and just send the clone to prison. You know, if you can make a clone, just blame it all on the clone, chuck the clone in jail. Sorry, I've distracted again. But, you know, I think that the body we saw of Epstein's in the jail was a clone. Apparently he's still alive.
Did he tell you you had to leave, or did you just go, or how did you get out?
Well, he was. I would never stay there for long. He knew I would have got away. So, I mean, he used to bring me for these short trips, and that's why I also think they were taking our eggs. You know, because of the weird things that happened, and also the butterfly trust that they have. And then, you know, it's a horrible thing to think about, but you know, if they really are into it, it would make sense for them to have their own farm of eggs. I suppose maybe, you know, he also always said that after girls were 22, they were no longer attractive or useful. You know, so you know, I wouldn't have gone back again anyway, because, you know, I was in New York after that. I had a boyfriend, an amazing boyfriend in New York. I spent 2.5 years of my life in New York after that. I never once tried to see Epstein.
Good.
And he was just a few roads down, you know. I obviously didn't want to see him.
Was it hard though, because you were in a mess in your mind to have a boyfriend? Was it difficult?
That boyfriend actually helped me a lot, because I told him about what had happened. He was a very patriotic American. He thought I was lying about what had happened because he was so patriotic. And eventually he realized I wasn't lying, and he's actually one of my saviors. You know, he
I
paid
can
for
imagine.
therapists
I
and really
can just imagine now you telling him Epstein, Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and this guy's thinking, this cannot be real, kind of thing.
No, he didn't believe it.
Yeah.
But he helped me through so much. Wow. Paid for me to see therapists. And they even emails, he even testified for me with the boys' lawyers, because there are emails between him and I where he told me that not everyone's like Epstein and I mustn't be so scared. You know?
So when you were having therapy, did you have good chemistry with your therapist?
Yeah, she was an amazing therapist. She helped me a lot. Yeah, it was like a talk therapist. I was never put on pills. Because, you know, that's another thing, is a lot of people, you know, they've got the mental health fund for the survivors. Well, I won't go ahead with that mental health fund because I wanted my therapist to help. And she wrote up a whole plan, but they forced her to put provision for a psychiatrist. And as soon as there's a provision for a psychiatrist, there's a provision for pills, and I don't want pills.
Yeah, it's good to have a holistic approach. I agree with you entirely. All right, so when you're with this boyfriend now, how old are you in the story at that point?
Tim, I was about, when I met him, I was about 25. Yeah, we dated from 25 to when I was 35.
And were your parents aware by the time you were 25 of what had happened with Epstein?
The only person I ever told was Tim. Never told anyone else. I was too ashamed.
Okay, and what do you remember the year Epstein got arrested the first time?
2006.
And when you saw that in the news, did that resurrect memories for you and bring about trauma?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. But also, like, he was like such a clever person, Epstein, that he always made me feel like it was my fault. He made all the victims feel like it was their fault, and we were like cheap pieces of nothing. So, you know, I was just like, I didn't really realize the depth of their evil right then. You know, only after he actually died did I have time to actually speak about it and look into it and then do more research myself. You know, also because I was given money through the fund. So I was able to step off the hamster wheel of work and just have a bit of time to sort of look into what happened. And that's when I realized I needed to start speaking out, because I didn't want to speak out at first at all. I just want to have a happy, quiet life. But then when I realized that they're victims who can no longer speak, I realized that I have to speak for them. And, that's why we're here, is speaking about Virginia being found dead. There's so many victims. I even heard another story about another victim who was apparently found drowned in Missouri or Mississippi recently. It's like...
So Nancy Grace did a piece last night, and she said there were two other survivors. There was Carolyn Andriano, and there was Lee Sky Patrick.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. And Ruslana, who was like Rapunzel. And with that, we can bring in Disney princesses, but let's bring that in next.
So what happened to Ruslana?
She jumped off a balcony in New York, apparently. A beautiful girl who was taken to Epstein Island. And that story always struck me so hard. And then I only found out years later that she was taken to Epstein Island. The most beautiful, stunning girl. She had hair, like long hair, and stunning. They called her Rapunzel. And you know about the JP Morgan, how they had the code name Snow White, Disney princesses. And another creepy thing is that, Virginia Giuffre died on Alice Day. They've got a day called Alice Day, which is to do with like Disney princesses and stuff, the 25th of April. And that's the day that Virginia Giuffre was found dead. And Virginia Giuffre always reminded Maria Farmer and I of Alice in Wonderland. Because, Wonderland, the rabbit hole, is... Yeah.
So, you're okay. You're all right. You're fine. Take your time. Take your time. So, we were talking about the first time Jeffrey got arrested, and it was in the news, and how you felt at that time, and then he got like a very light sentence, didn't he? Were you watching to see what sentence he got?
Yeah, I was. And I actually saw him one time after that, because when I was in New York, like I said, I had the boyfriend. I contacted my a girl I'd made friends with who was working for him, and we were going for coffee because we sort of kept in touch. She was actually from South Africa. To be honest, I actually introduced her to him, and I always feel bad for that. But the thing is, she was older than me. She was about 26 when I introduced her, and he was looking for CVs. And I warned her before. I said, this man is going to make sexual advances at you. I warned her. And she said, don't worry, I can handle it. Her name's Sue Hamlin. She went and she worked for him for many years. They became very close. I think she made a lot of money off it all. I don't know. But anyway, she was a girl I knew from South Africa, and she approached me asking me. I never approached her. And I was never paid money to introduce her to him either. We also sent my mum's friends CVs because, some of my mum's single friends, at the time we didn't know how evil he was. I knew he was like taking great advantage of me and the other girls. But as a young girl from Africa, where people are quite poor, some of the people I know were like, wow, please introduce me to this man. So, I sent my mum's friends CVs, and then also Sue's CV. And Sue ended up working for him, and she ended up staying there for very long. So anyway, I would never want to drag Sue into this. Sue's been traumatized through it, and I don't even speak to Sue anymore. And, I did warn her before she went, and I was never paid money for introducing her to him, and she stayed there for 20 years. It was her choice. But we went out the one day for coffee. And then I think it was in like about 2009 or 2011. And then Epstein wanted to say hello to me when I went past to meet her, and we were going for coffee. And then he, I went and sat in his office with him. I mean, this is years after he molested me and everything. And I said, I'm sorry that he was sent to prison, because, I was still like sort of sucked in with his thinking he was a decent person. Because, when these people abuse you, they do that. And people need to realize that. A lot of children get abused by parents. A lot of people get abused by people they trust. And it can really mess people's heads up, because when the person you're thinking you can trust abuses you, and it's a big thing that needs to be actually dealt with, because it's very hard for people to speak out. And, I never really trusted him, but unfortunately, I was petrified by him. But when I asked him about prison, he just laughed and he said, "Oh no, he never went to prison." He said, no, he never got sent to prison. He just like laughed at me when I asked that. But that was the last time I ever saw him. But he also did send me, because when I was with my child's father didn't believe that I knew him, because I said, I know that man. And then I emailed him to prove it to my child's father that I knew him. And then he emailed me back asking me for news. And that was a month before he died. Because, I just had a baby and everything. I never ever sent him nude photos. And it was very weird that he suddenly asked for nude photos because he'd never asked for them before. But I always felt like he was watching me through my computer. Computers came out and everything. And I always felt he was so powerful, like he could see me. And that's why I used to like almost email him to let him know, like, hi, I know you're watching me, But it's just, the whole thing's actually got so frightening and creepy. And, with Virginia Giuffre being found dead, another thing I want to bring up is, who was this woman who was supposed to be staying with her? She had this carer, this woman who was about 70, the one who was apparently in the bus accident. Where was she when Virginia was found dead? Was she a carer or was she a handler? Where was she when this happened? And also, why did Virginia, who's 41, need a carer who's 70? It's suspicious. And Virginia and I used to speak a lot. We were on a group chat. We did many video calls. She's an amazing girl. Suddenly, I could only get in touch with her through her husband's email address. It's like she'd almost been cut off. I can imagine when someone's been put through so much pressure and standing up, against these people, the anxiety can kick in and people can be given pills. And it's very easy to kill people on pills, much like Elvis. There are a lot of celebrities who've been knocked off with pills. And that's why it's always best to stay off pills. Pills are a temporary measure, not a permanent one.
Yeah, well said. That's what I believe has happened as well. It's called pharmacide.
Yeah. Pharmacy. Your pharmacy is pharmacy. Take away the P, it's pharmacy. Add an F, you've got pharmacy. Farm. Let food be their medicine, not the pills.
Yeah. Pills
are only for extreme circumstances. When someone really is not coping, then they need the pills. But not in general,
So when you were communicating with Virginia, did she tell you her dreams and hopes?
Well, she just used to speak about how she wanted to start this foundation and help other survivors. That's what Virginia wanted to do. And, that we used to speak often and, she was such an amazing friend to me. And then suddenly she went quiet and I sort of, I respected her privacy. I realized, okay, it's got too much because she's very much in the limelight. And so then I was given the email address to contact her through her husband's email and we used to chat. But then she just went completely quiet. And, I've been speaking about it online for a while. Like even on X, I put out a post in December saying, where is she? I'm worried. Because, there was those photos of her on the Daily Mail where she's stumbling outside the court. And there are people trying to pick her up off the floor. And why did no one notice? Why did no one say anything? And where were the lawyers, these brave boys' lawyers, while she's falling outside the court? Where the fuck were they? Sorry to swear. But where were they? Because this girl's obviously been going through hell. And I can also see she's had domestic violence disputes and her children taken away. I can't, I'm not surprised after the pain she's been put through. And if she was put on pills, she's an amazing angel, but I can just only imagine what her family's been through too, because there's too much pressure on one woman to go through all of that without any fucking support. And I'm sorry to swear, but I will swear because it's necessary. Where was her support?
Well said, Juliette. What did you make? What did you make of the bus crash story?
Shaun, because, when 2 weeks before Virginia passed away, someone actually messaged me on X and they said, she's going to die. It's witness protection. Roll with it. Well, that's the only thing that made me feel like a little bit more reassured when she died. But the thing is, if they were going to put someone in witness protection program, they would make it a clean thing. It would be quick, not clean, but quick. They would say bus accident done, or suicide, that's that. They're not going to drag it on like this. She was a woman crying out for help, putting out the things on Twitter. Unless they've done this just to mess with our minds, I don't know. You know, and also the photo that was put on Twitter, like she was almost already not alive. You know, and then also saying that there was domestic violence and she got hurt, and it just doesn't make sense. Because witness protection, they wouldn't work it like that. I mean, surely these people are more intelligent than if they're going to do witness protection, you know, CIA, FBI, who the fuck they are. They're going to make it quicker, and they're not going to drag it on like this. The girl was crying out for help. She was crying out for help. You know, and whether she took her own life or not, she was murdered by them, because who the fuck gave her those pills is what I want to know. And why was no one there to protect her or help her after everything? So she was murdered, actually. She was definitely murdered. I hope to God she's alive in witness protection, but unfortunately, it doesn't make sense, because they would have made it, you know, it wouldn't have been like so, you know, like this. It would have been more. Anyway, I'm I'm terribly fucking upset. And, you know, the other victims I'm also very worried about. You know, the boys' lawyers represented Virginia Giuffre, Sarah Ransom, Maria Farmer, Annie Farmer, and I am in touch with Annie and Maria Farmer. I get emails through them. I haven't heard their voices, but, you know, I'm in touch. Maria emails a lot. Sarah Ransom, I have heard nothing from in quite a while now. You know, and she's also tried to kill herself before, and just makes me very frightened. You know, Maria hasn't been well. Sarah Ransom's tried to kill herself. Virginia has killed herself. You know, sorry to go on. It's like,
I can imagine how scary that must be for all of the survivors when something like this happens. Everyone must be terrified, thinking, who's going to be next?
I don't even go out anymore, because, Shaun, I've had frightening incidents happen. The one night I went to visit a friend, I got followed home by a van. They were like flickering lights at me, trying to get me to pull over, like driving like this far behind my car. I just drove like crazy, and I got straight to where there were people, because I've been taught, you know, you know, I just know from the past, you go to where there are people immediately. If you're getting followed, you don't stop. You don't even go to a police station. You go to a gas station. You go to where there are people. So anyway, then the person sort of zoomed past. I've had my tires punctured. I've had my tires slashed. I've been followed by men wearing business suits taking photos of myself and my child on the beach. I literally don't even feel safe to leave my home anymore. Luckily, I live in a security estate in Africa, and, you know, I've got there amazing people who know what's going on. My neighbors all know about it. But it's very worrying for other Epstein victims, because too many of them have been found dead, especially when the main ones who testify. Virginia testified. Carolyn Adriano testified. They're both dead. Not many women testified. Well, the ones who have testified seem to be found dead. And what does that tell you? It tells people not to testify, not to speak the truth. It tells you to keep quiet. Well, guess what? We're not listening. They can kill me. I don't care. I actually don't care anymore. I'm just like, I'm obviously scared and stuff, but I actually, as long as like it makes a difference, that's all I care about. And I will keep telling my truth. I will keep saying what happened to me, as every other victim should do, because there's strength in numbers, great strength in numbers, because there are more of us than there are of them.
Is that your main focus now, is the activism?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, activism, I want to help people. I want to make the world a better place. But you know, at the moment, I've been feeling a bit confused about how to go ahead with the threats and everything. But yeah, I want to speak out for victims. I suppose I can do it online, right? I can do it from my home on here. I don't need to leave my house. I've got my security dogs. I live in a security estate. So yes, activism is what I want. I want to speak out for all children who've been hurt. Anyone who hurts a child will be killed in their afterlife. There is such a thing as hell, by the way. So people must watch out.
Juliette, do you think there's two forces at work here whereby they've got the doctor or whoever giving Virginia, for example, the medication, but then there's another force at work, is the campaign to put the stress on the person, the trolling, the black ops, the following you around in your vehicle? Because when you put more stress on a person, sometimes
Definitely.
that person might want to take more medication.
Oh, you're right.
And then the more stress, more medication, more stress, more medication, and then bam, they're gone.
That's actually so genius that you said that, Shaun. You're quite right, because I'm sure she's been going through the same thing. It's like you get pushed and pushed, till you're sort of pushed over the edge. And they do it in a sort of subtle way where you're like not sure. It's like, am I going mad or is this a threat? And especially with her being taken from her family and everything. Yeah. No, these people are sneakier than what we can imagine. Also, don't forget that there is such a thing as dark magic, black magic, What if they can actually curse someone to make them we've got to be very strong mentally. We've got to keep calling for angels and just to keep I don't know. That's the only thing I can do is just hope that angels help, because I actually do that. I call angels.
Did you ever see any Did you ever see any symbology or artifacts in Epstein's properties pertaining to dark magic?
Well, I saw the statue of Christ, Christ dead on the cross, like life size. I took a photo of it in New Mexico. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more going on here, and I really wish I knew more, that I could tell people more, but I think we all have to find the pieces together. It's like many pieces to a puzzle. But what I'm sure of is that there is such a thing as possession and demons, and that these people were very, very evil. I very much believe in the rituals and the tunnels and all of that. Like I said, I wasn't actually taken into the tunnels, but I do have the memory waking up, and it would make sense if they, to take people's eggs and create their own farm of children. And also just as concubines. It sounds a disgusting thing I saw today, a lot of these, they like to have a young concubine. So, if you take someone's egg and you raise a child and you make them think it's normal that they're there to have sex, the child knows nothing better than that. And it actually just makes me sick. I don't even want to talk about it. But, it's
Juliette,
much like Westworld.
Have you contemplated who's behind these black ops now that Jeffrey's gone and Maxwell's inside? Because Boyce said that Virginia had been under pressure from what Boyce described as Epstein collaborators. And are these people whose names have been protected, who he collaborated with, and they're scared they're going to come out into the open? So they're putting pressure on survivors so these names never come out. Do you think that's what Boyce meant?
Yeah, very much so. Also, if they were selling eggs or anything, then no one will ever know who the perpetrators were. Because if they're buying people that never existed, then how, like Westworld. I was also taken to the governor of Bill Richardson, the governor of New Mexico's mansion, and he looked myself and Sheila Davies up and down, and then him and Epstein went in and had a meeting with the vice president. And I smelt the same smell that I smelt when Clinton walks through the room by the hotel, like a smell of dead bodies and covered up with cleaning chemicals. I smelt it there again. So, maybe they were looking at us to buy eggs. I don't know. Because think about it. If people are sickos and they want kids to fuck around with, sorry to swear again here, but it makes me very angry. How better a way than to steal someone's eggs, make your own babies? And fuck them for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research has been done around the New Mexico location and the baby farm stuff. Even with Virginia, you know, they were trying to impregnate her.
Yes, you're quite right. There was the same thing with Virginia.
So, Juliette, what message do you have then for survivors who are watching this and people who support you?
Well, I just want to say, stand up for yourself. Never let anyone get you down, and don't be frightened of people, because there are always amazing people out there to help. And as much as people tell you that they won't help, they will, believe me. So if anyone tries to hurt you, stand up against them. You get away from them as quickly as you can, and find good people, find a good support system, because not everyone in this world is bad. And the more of us that stand up against them, the better, because there's safety in numbers. And the more people who are educated about what's been going on, I understand a lot of people are very busy with work. They're stuck on the hamster wheel of life. I understand that. People need to open up their minds and look into all theories. Look into all theories and decide what you feel makes sense. Because we've been lied to. You know, as far as this Epstein thing is going, there's a huge cover-up going on. They've lied to us. They won't release the Epstein list. They won't release the truth. You know, didn't Elon Musk and Trump promise that they were going to release the Epstein list? Well, guess what? Instead of the Epstein list being found, the fucking main Epstein victim was found dead. Sorry, Shaun.
No, it's facts. Well said. Yeah. So if people watching this video want to support you, Juliette, what links are we going to include? Are you on the socials?
Well, I'm on X, but you know, they do take my counsel where they've done it many times. You can always email me at juliettebryant@gmail.com, because I'm willing to share my email to anyone that needs to email me. But you can mainly find me, I suppose, on X at Juliette Bryant, you know, on X. But they might take my account away. So if you can't find me there, you can email me or you can contact Shaun. Shaun knows where I am.
So Juliette's links and contact will be in the description box below this video, viewers. Put in the comments. Let us know what you have thought. And huge thank you to you for just being so brave. I know it must be difficult going back in your mind to those places, but you've done tremendously. And, you know, you're carrying the spirit of Virginia forward. That's what you're doing right now. And we salute you for doing that, Juliette. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shaun. And so are you, and so many. And thank you for everyone for caring. Let the spirit of Virginia reign and make the world a better place.
Indeed. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to end this.